Hello, everybody. My name is Aztec Sovereign. Welcome to the Tell Your Story podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of canoe journey and giving more information about canoe journey. Speaking of that, the landing is going to be July 31st, roughly from noon to 6 p.m. And protocol is going to be from August 1st to August 5th. We are still needing volunteers, and if you would like to volunteer, you can go on the Nisqually website. And then, let's have our guests introduce themselves. First, we'll start off with you.
Okay. My name is Jean Sanders. My native name is Washtakila, and I'm a Nisqually elder.
Hello everyone, my name is Alan Frazier. I have a Nisqually name, Wallach. I married a lady from here around 1970, raised a family here, and was involved with the canoe journey for about 20 years and haven't been involved for recent years, but I'm very thankful to be here.
And you next.
My name is Marcy Ford, and um, I went on a canoe journey probably in 2020, I think. But anyway, I'm a Nisqually elder, and I don't live in the community, but I worked here for 23 years.
Like the full-on history of canoe journey. Let's start with the basics. So, what would you guys like the general public to know about canoe journey?
I'd like people to know that it's about bringing our native teachings back to life. And my friend Marcy was just talking about her experience of our families had difficult times in the last 100 years of trying to um, stay together as families and have our value systems as native people, community-oriented value systems, spiritually based value systems. And so the canoe journey brings all that back to life. We started in going on the annual journeys in 95. I give you one little short story, and we were having a planning meeting in Tulalip. I took two elders with me, Reggie Wells and Louis Squaliup. And it was there was only about 10 people there. Strange because we've traveled a long ways for a meeting. But one young man came in and he says, "My wife said she and our two children were going on the journey. I hadn't been with them for 7 years, so I decided to go on a journey with them. But the whole clicking thing was they were together as a family. 7 years they hadn't been together. I mean, so if we can get our little families together, and that's what our canoe journey is all about, is get our youngsters together with our elders and our spiritual people and our counselor people, and together our different tribes together to learn according to our native values. And that's generosity and sharing and respect for one another, kindness and reciprocity. Our native culture has different value systems, and everywhere you go on a journey, people are gifting each other, not just food, but emotional support to one another. So I just wanted to highlight what Marcy was talking about, how important it is to relearn our native ways of life, the elders together.
Yeah, speaking of the gifting, like many gifts are often exchanged at canoe journey. What's like the significance of that?
It's taking care of each other. And I will go ahead and I'll tell you that story. Is that we were in Sequalitchew this one time. And I actually knew some of the potlatch things that I had known before, but there was this specific one where we found, me and Leon, my son, he was only probably about 8 or 9 at that time. We were out on the beach and we found this boy out there and he was crying. And so we asked him what was the matter with him, and he said he cut his foot on an oyster shell. And so we helped him, picked him up and took him back to our vehicle, and we cleaned him up with ice water. And he told us his name, and we told him ours and everything. And I put a Band-Aid on him, and I told my son he had to give him some of these clean socks because he didn't have any socks. And so we bundled him all back up, and then my son took him back to his camp. Well, I never thought anything about it, but when it came down to protocol, now Squamish First Nation called us up, and they called us by our names. They knew who we were, and they acknowledged us. And this is something that I really didn't know, is that he said, if you take care of one of us, then you take care of all of us. And by taking care of my son, you took care of all of our whole family, our whole Canoe Journey family. And so he relayed to everybody what we had done. And he gifted us, um, he gave me a purse, and he gave my son a, a napkin or something he gave him. In any way, it was their way of knowledge that we took care of them. And was really important as far as gifting in the canoe journey. And it was something that our canoe family carried with us. So when somebody would help us, we would always acknowledge why they did that and when they did that. And
So one thing I did forget to mention that this year's protocol, or not protocol, landing site is going to be Sequalitchew beach area. And what is like the significance of that area to the Nisqually tribe?
Well, historically, before the white people came, the Nisqually people had over 2 million acres from the saltwater to the mountain. It's bounded by different streams, different rivers. But one of the major streams was Sequalitchew. And if you look at the archaeology in that area, there's huge ancient sites there. The Nisqually people had a huge village there. And it was just perfect for ocean access. From there was just food, any kind of food you could ever want. And there was a large population of people who lived there. So it's an ancient village. And in the Native world, the ontology holds that everything is fundamentally spiritual in nature. There's ancestral spirits there. And we ran into problems and conflicts with development there, people building homes and causing harm to those sites, and those village spirits that lived there, the land, and everything has a spirit, including the ancestors, you know. But it's a real special place to the Nisqually people. That's one of the major villages historically. The
And
way I
then,
see it, and there's one huge site. There's bigger than a football field. It was dated 10,000 years old.
oh wow. For those who do attend this year's canoe journey, um, not, I believe not everybody is going to be able to be on the actual site. So for those who don't know where Sequalitchew is, it's going to be near DuPont or in DuPont, and they're going to have a live streaming area. It's not going to be a public live stream, but there is a building which is the emergency services slash city hall viewing site, and they're going to be showing it on the screens there. So for the people who do want to see the landing, you are able to view it there. Also, now you were telling a story earlier, or that you said 2020 was your first one,
No,
or
I'm not sure what date it was.
oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
Would you like to?
Right. You know, like Alan was talking about, it's also like a healing journey. We
Mhm.
can go on it, and I was going through some life changes when Jean talked me into going on the canoe journey with her, and I took my oldest granddaughter with me, and it was the first time that we went on the journey, but it actually taught, reminded me of things that I learned from my parents. Because Gina and I didn't always live with our parents. We were in foster care and, lived with the family. So the things that I learned from my grandfather and from my dad, those were things, that experiences that they would do that I learned, when I went on the canoe journey, reminded me of different things that, you know, like I believe I went to church one time, and when I was a little girl and I came home was telling my dad about the Noah's Ark, and my dad just smiled at me and said, well, he says, well, us Indians have our own story about the Great Flood. And so when we were on the canoe journey, we were on we were at Alert Bay, and they were doing their songs and they were dancing, and they danced up a big plank up to the rafters of the building, and their story was about the Great Flood, and they had like masks on, like deer, or representing deer, and that I thought that was pretty fantastic, and I thought that was what my dad was talking about. So,
Wow.
so you do learn, you learn things that remind you, and you can tell your children, because I do tell my grandkids now.
You know, myself, there was a period of about 5 years when I coordinated. And during that time, you have to have a team that you can rely upon, because it's such a taking care of 100, 150 people, keeping them safe, traveling for 2 or 3 weeks out on the camping trails is a big deal. But over those years, she was one of my main team members, and like every morning we got to get up and we got to make 100 sandwiches at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we got to get these on our support boat and on our canoes. So Marcy did that for me for several years.
Oh, wow.
So she's, she was dependable, right? He's
Yeah.
got to make sure we got the supplies to get those sandwiches done and make sure they get prepared and get to the right place at the right time. I mean, but the whole point though is it takes a team. You got to have at least about a dozen people doing teamwork. There's transportation, there's food, we have a lot of counseling. We have all kinds of counseling because this journey is real arduous. It breaks people down depending on their personality, how they respond and react. But we got elders there and professional mental health counselors and spiritual people, and we're trying to bring people through a learning experience so they can work on their personality and their issues of life. Like when I first went on, I had lost a son to a death, so I went on this journey but it's a healing journey at the deepest levels. Marcia's talking about family fragmentation. Our families had a hard time in recent history of trying to stay together as families. And, I'm talking about how you lose a loved one. You got to keep yourself going in a spiritual way. But anyway, you do need a team, and we got all kinds of people there, part of your team. So I was real thankful. I had to take care of a lot of people over the years, and I'm very thankful to Marcy for being dependable, and Jean. My little team had about 10, 15 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So,
We learned a lot of stuff all during that whole time too, how to take care of people ourselves. And one of the things like when we talk about the historical places in Nisqually's, Sequalitchew, and some of the other tribes also brought us to their historical places and their spiritual, and shared that with us. But one of the things when we beginning, I think that I started right at the very beginning at 88, you know, is when I started. And I think our tribe started in 94,
95.
95. Yeah, and I think Marcy started in 90, probably 97, something like that. But we went all the time. But when we started too, we didn't know how to get from one place to the next place and next place, and all the canoes they didn't have any experience in charts and everything else to travel with. Nobody knew all this stuff. It was all new to everybody except our fishermen. And so we thought about our fishermen and we said, well, why don't we ask our fishermen to take us from here to the next place? And then that tribe asked their fishermen to take us to the next one because they have had years and years and years of experience in the water, and they knew the waters, they knew the tides, they knew all of that, and they knew all of these historical places too. And so we depended a lot, and that's part of our team too, was the fishermen. And they were all happy to do that too. They said, "Sure, we'll do that. We'll help you guys." And so, like Nisqually had 3 or 4 of the fishermen. They got together and they took us to Puyallup, and Puyallup's fishermen came and they met us, and they brought us into theirs. And so when the next day when they left, Puyallup's fishermen would take us to the next one. The next tribe fisherman would grab us, take us to the next one. And we did that for years and years until we all learned all the tribes and all where they were landing and marinas, everything, all the currents. We learned all of that. But it took us years, and we learned those historical places too. So it was a real learning experience with us, the first people that started doing this. So
Yeah, speaking along those lines, like what is you you did explain actually a lot of what I was going to ask next is the history of the canoe journey for specifically like when Nisqually started like on their first um, canoe journey, and then um, but is there any um, thing that you guys like any of you want to explain on how Nisqually heard about it, or how you get like what was that process like of really wanting to go for it? And
I think I'll make a start.
yeah,
Um,
that's good.
our natives, we've been trying to develop some healing modalities for dealing with decolonization and get our health back as native people because our statistically our lives were filled with challenges. So people working with substance abuse start brainstorming and they start looking at ways of, I guess, healing and working with our native traditional ways. And more specifically, the Puyallup tribe had 2 or 3 professional counselors on board, and they had a little team of people. And they had a big conference out at South Puget College called the Cedar Tree Conference. But they start talking about traditional healing. So we ended up hiring a couple of their one of the key players, Tom Heidelbrow and Philip Redigo. They sat in our gym trying to recruit people for the canoe journey. They planned a canoe journey. We didn't quite know what it was, an annual journey. And we only had about 10, 6, 8, 10 canoes at different times. But we started a journey and we went around the Puget Sound, real gentle and real easy. There wasn't very many people, maybe 10 to 20 from 4 or 5 reservations. And we all kind of traveled together, and um, it was no hardly any tribe knew their songs, so we were all learning the songs together, often singing together. We had some spiritual people help us. Um, Bruce Miller, Subier, was one of our main. He would get up with our young people. We had about 10 young people from Nisqually. Sherman Lashai's grandson and Jean's boys, and we had a small group, and we start learning the process of protocol, how to host one another. Like tribes did this for thousands of years, but it had been broken down. Tribes barely survived when tribes had no programs, no services, no quality of life was dismal. Just we were just struggling. All the tribes were struggling. So with this effort, Connie and some of the other planners, they developed a couple of programs. One was the Paddle to Seattle, and Jean's talking about that. Her, Connie McLeod's part Nisqually, part Chehalis, part Puyallup, but she always took care of our youngsters. She took care of Gene's son. He went up to Bella Bella. He went to Paddle to Seattle, and a couple of our other Nisqually youth with Connie McLeod. We didn't get our canoe to '02, and but in '95 we got these two gentlemen, and they start coordinating this local, they call it a full circle journey around the Puget Sound. So we had went really well. We didn't know, like Gene says, we didn't know much about anything, but we had to learn, right? And that learning was pretty difficult, but we did learn to listen to our fishermen out of necessity.
It's like
And
water has its ways of bringing people together from what I'm just hearing about all this.
yeah, but we started after that full circle journey. Took 2 years. We started doing it every year, but it's based upon a cycle, like a 4-year cycle. A hosting team has to speak up and say, "We'll host you in 4 years," and it takes lots of preparation because you're taking care of thousands of people and keeping everyone safe and fed, and it has these values of being real kind and really courteous and helpful. Everything is ultimately positive. Like people use kind words. Like I remember first time I went to Tilela in the big house. Some lady says, "Oh, my dearest relatives, we've been waiting for you." She was just trying to express how grateful it was to have other tribes come in. So it's a learning process of trying to rebuild that kind of support for that association for one another. Built. That's where our natives used to live. They took care of one another with great decorum and manners, high levels of graciousness, and so we're trying to revive that. And in our native values, people give away stuff. So everywhere we go, we gift these other tribes pretty presents, the best presents we can come up with everywhere, and they gift us those presents. So all these canoes, there's canoes on the water right now from faraway places. So they're going to village, and
Can I say something right here, Alan?
sure,
I wanted to say this because one of the first journeys that we went to, we didn't think about gifting. We never thought about it at all until the canoes came in and everything, and we fed everybody. And Allie McLeod and her sisters and a lot of the women in the community, they just got gifts together, you know. And I got home and I didn't really know what to do, and we didn't have anything except for I had rolls of cedar. And so we took the cedar and we got it all wet and everything, and we rolled them up and put them in bundles like that, you know, for each canoe, part of the gift. And actually, Nisqually threw this whole thing together without even talking to anybody about it. The first time the canoes came here, we did it just out of knowing we had to do something. But anyway, we were talking about it, and we says, "God, we're so broke. We don't have any money. We don't have any of these things. The only thing we have is cedar. We're just so poor. That's all we had to give away, you know." And so when everybody left from there, they says, acknowledged us later on. They said Nisqually was the richest tribe because they gave us cedar. And I never knew that until later. So that's what I wanted to acknowledge, and part of the gifting with yours, Alan. I don't know if you remember that, but the whole thing came together without us even talking about it.
Yeah, we didn't have none of our native teaching, right? We were just learning. It was a process of learning, and these spiritual people like Bruce Miller, they knew how these things they're supposed to work. So we ended up learning to, to make gifts and to accept gifts. It's a reciprocity type arrangement, and to be gracious and give people beautiful stuff with love, not resentment. So, and and they've been doing that for thousands of years, right? So it's like a relearning how to be gracious and in the mainstream world, the if you're a steamed person, you accumulate, right? In the native world, if you're a steamed person, you're supposed to be generous, and just in general life, you're supposed to share with people, and especially if people need something. There's one practice is people admire your necklace, and you're supposed to take it off and give it to them. And a lot of tribes still do that nowadays.
And teaching the younger people to do those things too. We had a bunch of young people with us one year, and so I told them, I says, this is what we have to do, and come in here, and we sat down and gave them some beads, and I told them we got to make necklaces, and the boys really complained, no, we don't want to do that, we don't do. But they did it anyway, and they stayed and kept on making them. But it was part of something that we're trying to teach them, to be able to make something and give it to someone else. And also the feeding of people that Alan was talking about, that's something that I learned from my mother and my grandparents, is that when people come, you always prepare food for them. No matter what you had or whatever, you just did it. Those are things that we try to pass on to the kids, the younger people.
There's lots of teachings about ceremonies, how to how to conduct ceremonies, and how to be successful and have good, fruitful, successful ceremonies. But one of the considerations is that ceremonies, you can't really control them to the extent you might want to. It's kind of like a spiritual experience, so you have to initiate the ceremonies and follow through with how it unfolds. And one of the main teachings is like maybe 3 people show up and you just do your very best. Maybe 3,000 people will show up and you just do your very best. So the reason I mention that is this is a new point in history where when we were, for the first 25 years, we could pretty much predict we're going to have 10,000 to 15,000 people show up at one time, people coming and going. But after COVID, and in recent times, and with the political strife going on with Canada and US and whomever, um, we just have to have faith and trust in the Creator and the spiritual ways of our ancestors to go forward with the ceremony, with the potlatch ceremony, to rebuild the good aspects of our cultural ways, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout. But it's really hard for people financially to travel, and but all we do know that all of our tribes are still working hard on their healing. We still got people in jail, we still got people dying, and we're still burying young kids. I mean, we still got a lot of healing work to do, and that's one of the reasons we're doing program, and when these tribes come, some of them are going to bring strong spiritual cleansing, and they're going to cleanse this land, this community, this 2 million acres. To these songs, these ancestors, our ancestors, they're going to hear these songs, and they're going to shed some of their goodness over us. So there's some good potential benefits, and different people have different points of view. Like we talking about our native traditional ways. A lot of people might not agree with those ways, and they might have their own spiritual beliefs and practices. To me, this is a traditional native way of healing, and the responsibility of taking care of thousands of people is a big question. Can you do it? But my idea is we just do our very best that we can with what we have to work with, and and that's all we need to do. We don't have to, have a remorse that was it this way or was it that way. We kind of go with the Creator's help, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. It could be the biggest one in the world, or it could be the smallest one in the world.
Yeah. So now for my final question, or a couple questions, that's I should say, is so you guys have been a part of countless canoe journeys yourself. What do you see changing in the future? And what would you say to someone who wonders why we keep this, uh, cultural tradition going?
Some of the first peoples that I've talked to, some of the elders from here and from different tribes, is that there's a lot of traditional things that were taught at the very beginning that we've kind of lost. And to me, I'd really like to see that change, and we go back to what we started with. And it's kind of hard to do because of um, the economics that goes along with everything with the journeys and stuff like that. And sometimes it gets hard and it kind of gets away from what we started with. But what I'd really like to see is I would like to see the older people get together, talk about why we started the journey in the first place, and grab those values and start talking about them again, and change it back to where it started rather than where it's at right now. And I don't really know how to do that other than going back to the stories, in the stories that tell our values as Native people. And I would like to see a lot of things, uh, I guess, being taught that way, in the future.
It's like just following the way of tradition because that's what it is. I mean, it's also like a yearly thing.
I share a few words
Yeah.
on that question, and it has to do with we had some elder teachers. We had a gal from Port Townsend. We call her Port Townsend Mary.
Hmm.
Um, we had an elder from McCall. His name was Mr. Green. But they would come to all of our meetings, all of our planning meetings, our practice meetings, and no one invited them, no one paying them money. They just came and they would teach us about a lot of deep stuff, just general manners and how to take care of ourselves or behave on the water doing what we're doing. But they'd always talk about spirits and so those teachers, they're all in the spiritual world now, and so we're kind of missing them. Um, we had a spiritual man here for a good 20 years. His name was Dobie Tom. He would um, I'm not sure what the right word is, spiritually cleanse everyone on a journey, get in a big circle, maybe 50 people, and spiritually cleanse them and work on us to make sure we're all can go on this journey and take care of business the way it needs to be done. So we don't have him to help out in that respect, but we had these other this Phil Reddick and this Tom Heidelbro, they developed what they call the copper ring ceremony, initiation ceremony. So this copper ring, they've given out maybe 7,000 of them, but you learn the 10 rules that go with the canoe. They call them canoe rules. And these rules are just common sense rules about how to conduct yourself on the journey, but they pertain to everyday life. For example, one of the main rules is respect the elders. Um, we had one rule: no drugs, no alcohol, no drugs. Um, so these rules, we had went over these rules in a ceremony, and then if people would make a commitment to try to follow those rules, then we gifted them copper rings. So you'll see a lot of people with copper rings, and every year they give them a bead, a color, certain color bead. So some people have a good 30 different color beads on their copper rings. And
Mm-hmm.
but those teachings, see, we don't. I don't see those teachings. I don't see our spiritual elders um, educating us. I guess that would be the proper word. And these elders are like this. Mary used to say, when you get on the water lanes, there's certain lanes where the canoes go out on the water. He said there's spiritual canoes in the water, and you're gonna feel, you're gonna have like an apprehension, or you're gonna know that there's something that's going on that you're not familiar with, and it's a spiritual canoe. So you got to sing your songs to let them know what you're doing and who you are, and acknowledge them. So she had these kind of teachings that's why I worry about our young people. They do need these teachings, and there's deeper teachings. You know what they're doing is has a spiritual nature to it, and somehow we gotta try to figure that out. And because our young people, they're doing their best. I really appreciate our young skippers and our young pullers. You know, it's not an easy thing to go out on that water.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a good change.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see change?
Teach the younger people some of the things that I talked to my grandkids on. They went on the canoe journey when they were just really young, and and they'll remember those things, that we talked about, even though, the way they have cell phones and all this media stuff that they look at. The older ones remember those things of being on the journey. But once they're grown up, they got to get a job and they have families, and so they don't get to attend it anymore. So I think that more of the gathering of people, like within our tribe, to have those things where people can come and just visit. Um, the elders' luncheons are important to me. I mean, I like going to the elders' luncheons at different tribes and meeting different people, telling different stories and learning about their tribe and how they're different from us, or not so much different, but different traditions that they do, is important. And I think that was one of the things that my grandkids got to enjoy to a certain extent, until they grew up and had to have jobs and carry on with things.
Yeah.
Everything's so modern, but yeah, I think that would be very important for them, especially like with my grandson. I raised him, and so he's learned a lot of things from me, and a lot of stories from the canoe journey, and he was kind of wild, and I didn't really want to take him on there because so Gene took him the first time because he'd make it through there, and I'd have to send him home.
uh, well, we'll end off on that because that's what it really is about at the end of the day is the community teachings, storytelling, and with that, we'll wrap it up here. I thank you guys. I appreciate you coming out and telling a little bit about Canoe Journey, and hopefully you guys in the public will come and check it out, even if you know, just even if it's only for 30 minutes.
Mhm.
But yeah, we appreciate you and thank you very much. And with that, we'll end it off. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right.
thanks. Thank you.